Tonight, we will let go gently. We are speaking of letting go in the most ordinary sense, not pushing anything away, not forcing change, simply allowing what is already loosening to loosen, like a hand that no longer needs to hold so tightly. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. There is nothing to remember. There is no need to stay awake. You can listen in the way you listen to rain through a window. You may drift in and out. It's okay if parts are missed. It's okay if sleep arrives early, or late, or quietly, without notice. We will stay together either way. Tonight unfolds slowly, and we begin with a story. There was once a man named Haruto who lived near the edge of a long, quiet road. Haruto was a basket maker, not a famous one, not especially skilled by reputation. He made baskets because people needed baskets, and because his hands had learned the work long ago. Each morning, Haruto walked to his small workshop before the sun fully rose. The road was empty at that hour. The air was cool, and the sounds were simple. His steps, a bird somewhere unseen, the faint creak of wood as he opened the door. Inside, the workshop held very little. Reeds stacked against one wall, a low stool worn smooth by years of use, a knife with a handle darkened from his grip. Haruto would sit, choose a bundle of reeds, and begin. He did not hurry. He did not think of the finished basket at first. His hands moved the way water moves around stones without discussion. But as the day went on, thoughts would arrive. He would think about whether the basket would sell, whether the reeds were too dry, whether his back would ache later, whether he should have learned another trade when he was younger. When these thoughts came, his hands tightened. The weave grew uneven. A reed would snap, sharp and final. Haruto noticed this, though he did not speak of it to anyone. He simply noticed that when he held his thoughts too firmly, the basket suffered. One afternoon, a traveler stopped by the workshop. Her name was Mirella. She carried little with her, just a small pack and a walking staff polished smooth by use. Mirella watched for a while without interrupting. Haruto continued working, aware of her presence but not uneasy. After some time, Mirella spoke. "You make baskets as if they are listening to you," she said. Haruto smiled, a little embarrassed. "I don't know about that," he replied. "I only know how to make them." Mirella nodded. "That is often enough." She picked up a finished basket and turned it slowly in her hands. "This one is good," she said. Haruto hesitated. "It will hold things," he said, "but it's not perfect." Mirella looked at him. does it need to be? Haruto did not answer right away. He realized he did not know. Mirella stayed the night. They shared a simple meal, and in the quiet after, Haruto found himself speaking more than usual. "I keep thinking about what these baskets should be," he said. "What people might want. What I should have done differently in my life." Mirella listened without correcting him. After a while, she said, "When you are weaving, where are you?" Haruto thought. "In my hands," he said finally. "Until I'm not." Mirella smiled gently. "Yes," she said. "And when you are not, what happens?" Haruto looked down at his hands. "They pull," he said. "They grip." Mirella nodded. "Hands are honest." She said, "They show us when we are holding too much." The next morning, Mirella left before the sun rose. She did not leave advice. She did not leave instructions. She only said, "Thank you for the shelter," and walked back onto the road. Haruto returned to his work. At first, nothing seemed different. The same reeds, the same stool, the same quiet room. But as the day unfolded, Haruto noticed something subtle. When a thought came about money, about time, about the future, he did not push it away. He did not argue with it. He noticed his hands. When they tightened, he loosened them slightly, not as a rule, not as a method, just as a response. The basket began to take shape. Not better, not worse, just itself. A reed snapped. Haruto paused. He replaced it without irritation. The basket would still hold things. As days passed, Haruto's work did not change in any dramatic way. People did not line up at his door. His name did not travel beyond the village. But something else softened. When a basket sold, he felt gratitude without relief. When one did not, he felt disappointment without collapse. The work continued. This is how letting go often appears. Quiet, unimpressive. We sometimes imagine letting go as a great release, a moment where everything falls away and clarity arrives like a bright morning. But more often, letting go is small. It is noticing where we are gripping, not judging the grip, not forcing the hand open, just loosening enough to let circulation return. We hold many things like Haruto held his thoughts, ideas of how life should look by now, stories about what success means, old words spoken to us long ago, still echoing. We carry them into our days, into our conversations, into our attempts to rest. And without realizing it, our inner hands tighten. Letting go does not mean dropping our responsibilities. It does not mean becoming careless or indifferent. It means allowing life to be worked with, rather than controlled. A basket does not need to be perfect to carry grain. A day does not need to be flawless to be lived. A night does not need to be conquered to bring rest. Haruto did not stop caring about his baskets. He stopped strangling them with expectation. This is an important distinction. Non-attachment is often misunderstood as distance, as coldness, as stepping away from life. But true non-attachment is intimate. It is being close enough to feel when tightening happens, close enough to soften. When we let go gently, we do not fall apart. We become workable again. Think of how many times we replay moments that are already over, conversations that ended, choices already made. We replay them not because they help, but because we are holding on, hoping for a different ending. Letting go does not erase memory. It releases the demand that memory behave differently. Haruto still remembered baskets that broke, still remembered days when nothing sold. But those memories no longer sat in his hands while he worked. They rested on the shelf of the past, where they belonged. As night deepens, it is common for the mind to gather what was not finished. Unspoken thoughts, unanswered questions. We are not trying to solve them here. We are simply noticing that holding them tightly does not solve them either. You may find that as listening continues, some thoughts drift further away. Others may come closer for a moment. Both are allowed. Letting go is not an achievement. It is a permission. Permission for things to be as they are, without adding extra weight. Haruto aged, as all people do. His hands grew stiffer. His pace slowed. He trained no apprentice, not because he refused, but because no one asked. When he was old, he still made baskets, fewer each day, more pauses between reeds. Sometimes he sat with unfinished work and simply watched the light move across the floor. If someone asked him what he had learned in his life, he would likely shrug. He had no teaching to offer. But those who watched him work felt something settle in themselves. They noticed how his hands rested between movements, how he did not rush to correct small imperfections, how he allowed the basket to arrive in its own time. This, too, is a teaching, though it does not announce itself. As we move further into the night, the story of Haruto does not need to be remembered. Its shape may blur. Details may fade. What remains is the feeling of loosening, the sense that nothing is being demanded. We are not going anywhere. We are not becoming anything. We are simply letting go, gently, again and again, as often as needed. The night is long. There is room for everything to slow. We continue together, without effort, without hurry, letting the weave hold on its own. The night continues without asking anything of us. Letting go, as we are discovering, does not announce itself. It does not arrive with certainty. Often it arrives as a small release we only notice afterward. There is another story that stays with us. It is about a woman named Amina who lived near a wide river. The river was not dramatic. It did not rush or roar. It moved steadily, carrying silt and light and whatever else found its way into it. Amina repaired boats. She did not build them from the beginning. Others did that work. She fixed what time and water wore down. People brought her their boats with apologies. I should have taken better care, they would say. I waited too long. I pushed it harder than I should have. Amina never responded to these confessions. She only nodded and examined the damage. Her work was quiet, replacing planks, sealing cracks, straightening what could be straightened. Sometimes a boat could not be saved. When that happened, the owner would look to Amina for judgment, for blame, for reassurance. Amina would simply say, "It has carried enough." This puzzled people. Enough for what? Enough for whom? But she did not explain. One evening, after the river had gone dark, a young man named Tomasz came to her workshop. His boat was small and poorly made. The wood was thin. The repairs would be many. Tomasz stood nearby while Amina worked. "I need this boat," he said. "I can't afford to lose it." Amina continued examining the hull. "I know," she said. "I use it every day." Tomasz went on. "I cross the river to work. I carry goods. If it breaks, I don't know what I'll do." Amina looked up at him then. "You're already doing what you'll do," she said. "You're here." Tomasz frowned. "That's not what I mean." Amina smiled faintly and returned to her work. The repair took a long time. The wood resisted. Some planks warped when lifted, refusing to return to their original shape. Tomasz watched, growing more anxious. "Can you fix it?" he asked again. Amina paused. "I can repair what is willing," she said, "but I cannot convince the boat to be something it no longer is." This frustrated Tomasz. "That doesn't help me," he said. Amina nodded. "I know." When the work was finished, the boat looked different, heavier, more patch than original. Tomasz pushed it into the water the next morning. It floated, not gracefully, not proudly, but it floated. Tomasz crossed the river carefully that day, and the next, and the next. Each crossing, he listened for cracks. Each ripple made him tense. The boat carried him. One afternoon, the river swelled, not dangerously, just enough to change its sound. Tomasz hesitated at the shore. He thought of turning back. He thought of waiting. Then he remembered Amina's words. It has carried enough. He understood then, not as an idea, but as a feeling that the boat was already doing what it could. He crossed. Halfway across, a plank shifted. Water seeped in slowly. Not a dramatic break, just a quiet giving way. Tomasz turned back. He reached the shore with wet boots and a sinking boat. He stood there for a long time, holding the rope. When he brought the boat back to Amina, he expected anger, or at least disappointment. Amina looked at the boat, then at Tomasz. It carried you back, she said. Tomasz swallowed. Yes, he said. That is not nothing, Amina replied. They dismantled the boat together. The usable wood was set aside. The rest was returned to the river bank. Tomasz asked, "What should I have done differently?" Amina thought for a moment. "Nothing," she said. "You listened when it was time." Tomasz did not cross the river for a while after that. He found other work, closer to home, less profitable, but steadier. In time, he built another boat, stronger, slower, and he crossed again. This story, like many, is not about boats. It is about knowing when something has carried enough. We often stay with things long after they are no longer supporting us. Jobs, roles, expectations, even versions of ourselves. We stay because leaving feels like failure, because letting go feels like loss. But sometimes, letting go is simply acknowledging that something has done its work. Amina did not scold the boat for breaking. She did not praise it for lasting. She respected its limits. We are not taught to do this with our own limits. We are taught to push, to endure, to hold on longer than is kind. Letting go gently asks a different question. Not, how much more can I take? But has this carried enough? This question does not demand immediate answers. It does not force action. It invites honesty. Sometimes we find that what we are holding still carries us, even if awkwardly. Sometimes we find it does not. Either discovery is allowed. The river did not punish Tomasz for crossing. It did not reward him for stopping. It simply moved as it always had. Life does not negotiate with our attachments. It responds to reality. When we release our grip, even slightly, we feel this more clearly. We begin to sense where effort is being wasted, where tension is unnecessary. Letting go does not mean abandoning care. Amina cared deeply about her work. She just did not argue with the truth of the materials. We can bring the same attitude inward. What if we stopped arguing with what is already true tonight, not to approve of it, just to stop fighting it? Fatigue does not need justification. Uncertainty does not need fixing. Sleep does not need to be achieved. They arrive when space is made. And space is made by loosening, not forcing. As the hours pass, listening may become less clear. Words may blur at the edges. That is not a problem. Understanding has already done what it needs to do. Like Tomasz standing on the shore, we may still be holding the rope, even as the boat sinks. There is no rush to let go of the rope. Sometimes the hand releases on its own. We remain here, unhurried, allowing stories to rise and settle, letting the river carry what it carries, and trusting that what has carried enough will rest when it is time. The night moves forward without marking the hours. Letting go continues to show itself not as a decision, but as a soft recognition. Something loosens, and we notice only afterward that the weight is less. There is another story that belongs to this night. It is about a monk named Serene who lived in a small hillside temple where the wind was nearly constant. The wind moved through the pines, along the tiled roofs, through the open corridors. It was never violent, never still. Serene had arrived at the temple as a young man and stayed as an old one. He swept the paths, rang the bell, copied texts when his eyes were strong enough to do so. He was known among the villagers as steady, not wise, not remarkable, just steady. When people came with questions, Serene listened. He rarely answered directly. Instead, he would ask them to walk with him. One afternoon, a potter named Lucia climbed the hill to see Serene. She carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth. They walked together along the stone path behind the temple. The wind stirred fallen needles at their feet. "I'm tired," Lucia said. "I love my work, but I'm tired." Serene nodded and kept walking. "I used to enjoy shaping clay." She continued. "The waiting, the firing, even the failures. She unwrapped the cloth and showed him a cracked bowl. "I can't stop thinking about what I've lost," she said. "My hands feel heavier every year." Siren stopped near a pine tree whose roots broke through the stones. "May I hold it?" he asked. Lucia handed him the bowl. Siren turned it slowly, tracing the crack with his finger. Then, without warning, he placed it gently on the ground. The wind caught it, not enough to move it far, just enough to tip it. The bowl rolled, struck a stone, and broke completely. Lucia gasped. "That was the last one," she said. Her voice tightened. "You didn't have to." Siren raised his hand, not to stop her, but to pause the moment. "Watch," he said softly. The wind moved through the pine needles again. The broken pieces rested where they had fallen. "It was already broken," Siren said. "Only now it has finished breaking." Lucia knelt, touching the fragments. "I wanted to keep it," she said, "even cracked." Siren nodded. "That is natural." They stood quietly for a while. Lucia asked, "Why does it hurt more to let go of something imperfect than something whole?" Siren smiled faintly. "Because we believe we can still fix it," he said. "And that belief makes us hold tighter." They resumed walking. Lucia said nothing for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Should I stop making bowls?" Siren did not answer. They walked until the path ended at a simple bench overlooking the valley. "Sit," Siren said. They sat. The wind brushed past them, tugging at Lucia's sleeves. Siren spoke again. "Letting go is not deciding what stays," he said. "It is noticing what is already leaving." Lucia watched the valley below. Smoke rose from distant houses, thin and temporary. "I don't know who I am without my work," she said. Siren nodded. "Then do not hurry to find out," he said. Lucia stayed at the temple until evening. They shared tea. They spoke of ordinary things. When she left, she did not take the broken pieces with her. She returned to her workshop the next day. She touched the clay. Some days, she worked. Some days, she did not. When she worked lightly. When she did not, she rested without guilt. She did not announce a change. She did not explain herself to anyone. Over time, her bowls changed, thicker, simpler, fewer. Some cracked, some did not. She stopped keeping the cracked ones. This story does not end with clarity. Lucia did not discover a new identity. she did not transcend loss. She simply stopped arguing with what her hands were already telling her. This is often how letting go works. We wait for permission from the mind, but the body has been voting quietly all along. Tension, fatigue, resistance. These are not failures. They are messages. Siren did not teach Lucia how to release her attachment. He let the wind finish what had already begun. We often hold on to things long past their season because we fear the emptiness that follows. But emptiness is not absence. It is space. Space for the next movement, or for rest. Letting go gently means trusting that we do not need to fill every space immediately. A cracked bowl does not need to be displayed to prove effort. A tired season does not need to justify itself. As the night deepens, the same truth applies here. Listening may fade. Thoughts may wander. There is no obligation to hold on to the thread of words. They are like pine needles carried by wind arriving, settling, moving on. We are not losing anything important by letting them pass. We are gaining room. Room for the body to soften, room for the mind to stop gripping. Letting go is not forgetting who we are. It is forgetting who we are supposed to be. The wind outside the temple did not choose which needles to move. It moved what was ready. Tonight, the same quiet movement continues. Nothing is forced. Nothing is delayed. We remain here together, allowing what is already loosening to loosen, trusting that when the hand opens, it opens because it is time. The night holds its shape without effort. Letting go, when we stay with it long enough, begins to feel less like an action and more like a rhythm. Something tightens. Something loosens. Again and again, without commentary. There is another story that moves quietly through this rhythm. It is about a man named Iosif who kept a small lighthouse on a rocky coast. The coast was not dangerous by reputation. Ships did not often wreck there. But the light had been built long ago, and Iosif had inherited its care from those before him. He lived alone in a narrow stone house beside the tower. Each evening, before dusk, he climbed the spiral steps and lit the lamp. Each morning, after sunrise, he extinguished it. The work was repetitive, predictable. Visitors sometimes asked if he grew bored. Iosif would shrug. "The light does not," he would say. For many years, the mechanism worked as it always had. The gears turned. The lens rotated. The beam swept the water in slow, patient arcs. But slowly, as happens with all things exposed to salt and wind, the parts began to wear. At first, it was small, a sound in the gears that had not been there before, a hesitation in the rotation. Yosef noticed. He cleaned the mechanism more often, oiled the joints, adjusted what he could. He did not complain. He simply worked a little harder. When the sound grew louder, he worked harder still. One night, during a heavy fog, the beam faltered. Not completely, just a dimming, like a breath taken halfway. Yosef felt a tightening in his chest. He stayed awake the rest of the night, watching the light, listening to the gears, ready to intervene. Nothing terrible happened. By morning, he was exhausted. The next day, a woman named Eleni arrived with supplies. She had recently taken over deliveries along the coast. "You look tired," she said, setting down the crates. Yosef nodded. "The light is aging," he said. Eleni glanced at the tower. "All lights do," she replied. Yosef frowned. "That doesn't mean I should let it fail." Eleni did not argue. That evening, Yosef climbed the tower as usual. He checked everything twice. When he lit the lamp, it burned steadily. Still, he did not sleep. In the early hours before dawn, the light flickered again. This time, it went out. Only for a moment, then it returned. Yosef's heart raced. He relit it manually, hands shaking. At sunrise, he sat on the steps, drained. Days passed like this. Effort increased. Rest decreased. Yosef felt himself tightening around the responsibility, gripping it as if his vigilance alone kept the coast safe. One afternoon, Eleni returned. She watched Yosef struggle with a stubborn latch. "You are holding the light as if it were your own breath," she said. Yosef did not look at her. "If I don't," he replied, "who will?" Eleni considered this. "May I tell you a story?" she asked. Yosef nodded reluctantly. "My grandmother kept a fire," Eleni said. "In her village, every home took turns tending it. She once stayed awake 3 nights in a row when she thought it might go out. When she finally collapsed, the fire burned on without her." Yosef said nothing. Eleni continued. "When she woke, she cried. Not because the fire survived, but because she realized how much fear she had added to something that already knew how to burn." Yosef sat heavily on a crate. "That's different," he said. "This light matters." Eleni smiled gently. So did the fire. That night, Yosef lit the lamp as usual. He stayed awake, listening. The light dimmed again. This time, he did not rush to correct it. He watched. The beam weakened, then steadied. The gears groaned, then settled. Yosef felt his hands unclench slightly. Nothing happened. The next night, he slept for a few hours. The light flickered. It recovered. Weeks passed. Eventually, the mechanism failed completely. The light went dark and did not return. By then, a newer lighthouse farther along the coast had already taken over much of the work. Ships relied on different markers now. The sea had not noticed Yosef's fear. When the tower finally closed, Yosef did not feel relief. He felt something quieter, a sadness without panic, a letting go without collapse. He helped dismantle the old mechanism. He cleaned the lens one last time. On his final evening there, he climbed the tower and watched the sunset without lighting the lamp. The coast was calm. The water reflected the fading sky. Nothing was lost. This story speaks to a very human habit. We often believe that our constant effort is the only thing holding the world together, that if we relax even briefly, something essential will fail. So we grip harder. We stay vigilant long past usefulness. We confuse care with control. But much of what we hold has its own momentum, its own lifespan. The lighthouse did not fail because Yosef rested. It failed because all things age. Letting go gently does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means recognizing when responsibility has quietly changed. Sometimes, what we are holding no longer needs holding. Sometimes, it never did. We add fear where none is required. We add effort where ease would suffice. The body knows this. Exhaustion is not a moral failure. It is information. When we listen, even slightly, something softens. Tonight, as listening continues, the same pattern may appear. Thoughts try to keep the light burning, to monitor, to fix. They mean well. We can thank them without obeying them. Letting go does not extinguish the light of care. It allows it to burn without strain. The night does not need to be watched. It unfolds on its own. If sleep arrives, it arrives. If wakefulness lingers, it lingers. Neither requires supervision. We are learning, slowly, that not everything needs our constant attention to continue. Some things complete themselves when we step back. Some things end without asking permission. And in that ending, there is often more peace than we expected. We remain here, without gripping the beam, allowing the light to dim or glow as it will, trusting the night to hold what no longer needs our hands. The night continues, unannounced, as it always does. Letting go. When we stay with it long enough, stops feeling like something we are doing. It becomes something that happens when we stop interrupting what is already underway. There is another story that belongs to this quiet unfolding. It is about an elderly woman named Kaori who lived at the edge of a market town. Her home was small, built around a courtyard where a single plum tree grew. The tree was older than the house. Its bark was rough, its branches irregular. Each spring, it bloomed anyway. Kaori had lived with the tree her entire adult life. She swept fallen petals from the stones. She gathered plums when they came. She spoke to it when no one was listening. Kaori was known for keeping things. Not hoarding, not disorder. She simply did not throw things away. Cracked bowls stayed on shelves. Faded cloth was folded and stored. Letters were tied with string and placed carefully in boxes. When neighbors teased her, she smiled. "They're not heavy," she said. "I know where they are." But as years passed, her hands grew weaker. Her knees complained when she bent. The shelves grew fuller, though she could not say when that had happened. One afternoon, a carpenter named Raphael came to repair her roof. He noticed the stacks along the walls. "You have many stories here," he said, gesturing gently. Kaori nodded. "Yes," she said. "They remind me where I've been." Raphael hesitated before speaking again. "Do they still take you there?" he asked. Kaori paused. She looked at a small wooden box near the window. Inside were letters from a friend she had not seen in decades. "I don't open them often," she admitted, "but I like knowing they're close." Raphael nodded, respectful. That evening, a storm moved through the town. Not fierce, just enough to shake branches and scatter leaves. The plum tree dropped several old limbs into the courtyard. In the morning, Kaori stood looking at them. They had been dead for some time, dry inside, only now fallen. She felt something tighten in her chest. A neighbor offered to help clear them. Kaori surprised herself by agreeing. As they worked, she noticed how much light entered the courtyard once the branches were gone. The tree looked smaller, but also lighter. That afternoon, Kaori sat inside, the open door letting in cool air. She looked again at the boxes. She opened one. Inside was a scarf, threadbare and soft, dyed a blue that had once been bright. She held it, feeling the familiar texture. She remembered the day she received it, the laugh that came with it, the season it belonged to. Her hands trembled slightly. She folded the scarf once more, then paused. Something in her loosened. She placed it in a different pile. Not to throw away, just to move. Over the next days, Kaori worked slowly. She did not make decisions quickly. She did not force herself. She touched each item. She allowed memory to come and go. Some things returned to their places. Some moved closer to the door. When Raphael returned to finish the roof, he noticed the change. "You've made space," he said. Kaori smiled faintly. "The tree helped," she replied. He laughed softly, then grew quiet. "Do you miss what you've moved?" he asked. Kaori thought. "I miss the holding," she said, "but not the weight." By the end of the week, several boxes were gone, given away, shared, released. Kaori did not feel lighter in the way she expected. She felt steadier. The house breathed differently. The courtyard echoed softly at night. The plum tree bloomed as it always had. This story is not about discarding memories. Kaori did not erase her past. She did not reject what mattered. She simply stopped insisting that everything remain within arm's reach. We often keep things close because we fear distance means disappearance. That if something moves out of our hands, it will vanish. But letting go gently does not destroy connection. It changes its shape. A memory does not need an object to exist. A season does not need to be preserved to have been real. When we loosen our grip, we discover that much of what we feared losing has already settled inside us. The rest was just weight. Tonight, this may be happening quietly within us. Old thoughts may drift further away. Familiar worries may feel less urgent. This is not because they are unimportant. It is because they no longer need guarding. Letting go is not forgetting. It is trusting that what truly belongs will not disappear when unattended. Kaori did not rush to clear her house. She listened for readiness. Readiness does not shout, it whispers. Sometimes it sounds like fatigue, sometimes like boredom, sometimes like a sudden tenderness we did not expect. We do not need to respond immediately. We only need to notice. As the night deepens, the same permission exists here. You may still be listening closely. You may already be drifting. Both are fine. The stories do not need to be held together. They do not need to be remembered in order. Like the boxes in Kaori's home, they can rest where they land. Some will stay. Some will move on their own. Nothing important is being lost. We remain together in this slow clearing, where space appears not through effort, but through kindness toward what is ready to leave, and patience with what is not. The night is wide enough for both. The night settles deeper, as if it has found its own resting place. Letting go, by now, may feel less like a topic and more like a quiet companion. It walks beside us without speaking much. It does not hurry us forward or pull us back. There is another story that belongs to this companionship. It is about a man named Stefan who repaired clocks. His shop sat on a narrow street where the sun reached only in the afternoon. Inside, the walls were lined with clocks of every size. Tall wooden cases, small brass travel clocks, plain kitchen clocks with worn faces. Some worked, some did not. Stefan knew the sound of each one. He could tell, just by listening, which gear was slipping, which spring was tired, which clock would never keep perfect time again. People trusted him. They brought him clocks that had belonged to parents, to grandparents, to homes they no longer lived in. Stefan treated every clock carefully, but he treated time itself differently. He never wore a watch. When asked why, he would smile and say, "I already hear enough ticking." For many years, Stefan worked without strain. His hands were steady, his eyes sharp. But slowly, as happens without announcement, his fingers stiffened. Tiny screws took longer to turn. Delicate springs tested his patience. He noticed this before anyone else did. At first, he compensated, worked slower, rested more often. Still, there were moments when his hands hesitated. One afternoon, a woman named Noor entered the shop carrying a clock wrapped in cloth. She looked uncertain. "It doesn't need fixing," she said quickly. "I just want it checked." Stefan nodded and unwrapped it. It was a simple clock. Nothing rare, but well used. He set it on the counter and listened. The ticking was uneven. "It's losing time," Stefan said. Noor sighed. "I know," she said, "but it's always been like that." Stefan opened the back. The mechanism was worn, not broken, just tired. "I can adjust it," he said, "but it will never be precise." Noor hesitated. "That's fine," she said. "I don't need it to be perfect." Stefan paused. For reasons he could not name, he felt something tighten. He adjusted the clock carefully. When he finished, it ticked more smoothly. Noor thanked him and left. That evening, Stefan stayed late. He took down an old clock from the wall behind the counter, one he had repaired many times over the years. It was his. He listened. The ticking wavered. He opened it, hands moving from memory more than strength. As he worked, frustration rose. A screw slipped. A spring resisted. He felt heat in his chest. He realized then that he was trying to make the clock do what it no longer could, and perhaps what he no longer could either. The next day, Stefan closed the shop early. He sat in a chair near the window and listened to the clocks. Some ticked steadily. Some faltered. Some were silent. The room was full of time, moving in many different ways. A memory surfaced. Years earlier, his teacher had said, "A clock is not wrong because it slows. It is only telling a different truth." Stefan had not understood then. He understood now. Over the following weeks, Stefan changed his work. He stopped accepting the most delicate repairs. He did not announce this. He simply said, "I can't help with that anymore." Some customers were disappointed. Some understood. A young apprentice named Milo began spending afternoons in the shop. Stefan showed him what he could. Not everything, only what was ready to be passed on. One day, Milo asked, "Does it bother you to let the harder work go?" Stefan thought, "It bothered me more to pretend I could still hold it," he said. He took the old clock from behind the counter and placed it on a shelf. It still ticked, irregularly. He did not fix it again. He let it speak in its own way. This story, too, is not about clocks. It is about our relationship with time. We often believe that letting go means falling behind, that easing effort means losing relevance. But time does not ask us to keep pace with who we once were. It asks only that we move honestly now. Stefan did not abandon his craft. He adjusted his grip on it. Letting go gently often looks like this: not stopping, not clinging, but meeting the present without forcing it to resemble the past. We carry many internal clocks, ideas of how productive we should be, how capable, how strong. When those clocks begin to lose time, we tighten our hold. We push, we judge. But perhaps those clocks are not broken. Perhaps they are simply telling a new truth. As the night continues, you may notice your own sense of time changing. Minutes stretching, thoughts slowing. This is not something to correct. It is something to allow. Letting go does not mean time disappears. It means we stop demanding that it behave. Stefan still listened to ticking each day. He just stopped arguing with its variations. Tonight, we can do the same. We do not need to measure progress. We do not need to keep pace with the words. They will continue whether or not we follow them. Some clocks in the mind may slow. Some may stop. Nothing essential is lost. We are not here to keep perfect time. We are here to rest in the time that is given. And that, too, is a form of letting go. The night holds us without counting the hours. The night remains patient with us. Letting go now feels less like something we are learning and more like something we are remembering, as if this way of being was always familiar, only temporarily forgotten. There is another story that rises naturally here. It is about a woman named Sabella, who lived near a stretch of open fields where sheep grazed. She was a shepherd, as her parents had been, and their parents before them. Each morning, she walked the same paths. Each evening, she returned by the same gate. The work was simple to describe and difficult to finish. The sheep wandered. Weather shifted. Fences failed without warning. Sabella knew every animal in her care. She knew which one limped slightly, which one pushed ahead, which one lagged behind. She also knew loss. Every shepherd does. Illness, storms, accidents that no amount of watching could prevent. When she was younger, Sabella fought these losses fiercely. She stayed awake through nights of rain. She ran after strays, long past exhaustion. She blamed herself for every absence. As the years passed, something changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically. One winter, a heavy fog rolled across the fields and did not lift for days. The sheep grew restless. Sounds carried strangely. Sabella moved more slowly than she once had. Her knees ached. Her breath came harder on the hills. She did what she could. Still, one sheep wandered too far. Sabella searched until nightfall. She called. She listened. Nothing answered. She stood in the fog, holding her staff, and felt a familiar tightening begin. The urge to keep searching, to refuse rest, to prove care through suffering. But something else rose alongside it. A quiet knowing. She had done what was possible. Sabella turned back. The next morning, the sheep did not return. She buried her face in her hands briefly, then straightened. Later that day, a young boy named Matteo approached her at the edge of the field. "I found one of your sheep," he said softly. Sabella followed him. The sheep lay still beneath a tree. It had slipped on wet ground. Sabella knelt. She felt sadness, clear and sharp, but she did not feel the old collapse. Matteo watched her. "Aren't you angry?" he asked. Sabella shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm finished with that part." Matteo frowned. "What part?" "The part where I believe pain means I failed," she replied. They stood together in silence. Afterward, Sabella gathered what could be used. The rest, she left to the land. The fields did not judge her choice. The sheep continued grazing. The fog lifted. This story is not about becoming indifferent. Sabella still cared deeply. She still felt loss. But she no longer added extra suffering by refusing what had already happened. Letting go gently does not remove grief. It removes the second arrow, the self-blame, the endless replay, the demand that reality be different. We often confuse letting go with coldness because we have learned to measure care by tension. If we are not straining, we assume we are not trying. But effort and care are not the same. Care can be steady without being rigid, present without being exhausting. Sabella did not love the sheep less. She loved without strangling herself in the process. Tonight, this distinction matters. Many of us hold our lives like Sabella once held the fields hyper-vigilant, unwilling to rest, believing that loosening attention means abandoning responsibility. But much of life does not require that level of gripping. Some things need watching, some things need tending, and some things need space to unfold beyond our control. Letting go gently means learning to tell the difference. It means listening for the moment when effort becomes strain. The body often knows first. A heaviness in the chest, a fatigue that sleep alone does not solve, a quiet resistance to continuing as before. These are not signals to push harder. They are invitations to soften. Sabella did not make a philosophy of her change. She did not explain it to the village. She simply walked the fields differently. She rested when night came. She grieved when loss arrived. She did not confuse the two. As the night deepens here, you may notice something similar. Thoughts that once demanded attention may now feel less urgent. Emotions may still be present, but less gripping. This is not because anything has been resolved. It is because the hand is opening. Letting go does not mean life becomes easy. It means we stop insisting that it be something else. The fog comes. The fog lifts. We walk when we can. We rest when it is time. And we trust that care does not disappear when effort softens. We remain here together, moving at the pace the night sets, not forcing clarity, not resisting rest, allowing what is ready to leave to do so, and what remains to stay without tension. Nothing more is required. The fields are wide enough. The night is long enough. And letting go continues, quietly, on its own. The night moves onward, unmeasured and unhurried. By now, letting go may feel less like release and more like trust. Trust that what matters does not require constant tightening. trust that what fades does so because its work is complete. There is another story that belongs to this quiet trust. It is about a man named Petru who carved stone. His workshop sat at the edge of a quarry where pale rock rose from the earth like frozen waves. The sound of chisels echoed there during the day, sharp and rhythmic. Petru was known for his precision. He carved markers for roads, weights for presses, simple figures for gardens. Nothing grand, nothing ornate, but his work fit its purpose exactly. Petru believed deeply in finishing. A stone, once begun, should be completed. A line, once cut, should be followed through. He took pride in this. When his hands were strong, it served him well. But stone is patient, and bodies change. Over time, Petru's shoulders stiffened. His grip weakened in small, undeniable ways. He adjusted his stance. He changed tools. Still, some stones resisted. One afternoon, a merchant named Davin brought Petru a block of limestone. "I want a marker," Davin said, "for my family land." Petru examined the stone. It was flawed. Veins ran through it at odd angles. It would fracture unpredictably. "This stone may not finish cleanly," Petru said. Davin waved this away. "It's what I have," he said. "You're skilled enough." Petru hesitated. He wanted to refuse, but habit spoke louder. He accepted the work. Days passed. Petru worked carefully, slowly. Each cut revealed more instability. The stone cracked where it should not. Edges crumbled. Petru felt frustration build. He woke thinking about the stone. He dreamed of it splintering beneath his hands. He pushed harder. One morning, a significant fracture appeared. The marker could still be finished, but it would never match Petru's standards. He stared at the stone for a long time. A younger carver named Alon, who shared the quarry, noticed. "You can still make it work," Alon said. Petru nodded. "I know," he replied. "But do you want to?" Alon asked. The question unsettled him. Petru had never asked himself that before. He had always finished. That evening, Petru sat alone in his workshop. He ran his hand along the cracked surface. The stone was not wrong. It was simply itself. He thought of how many times he had forced a line to continue, even when the material resisted. How many times he had carried that same habit into his life. Conversations prolonged beyond honesty. Efforts extended past usefulness. He realized then that finishing had become a way of avoiding disappointment. If he finished, he did not have to admit limitation. The next day, Petru called Davin back. "This stone does not want to be a marker," he said. Davin frowned. "You're quitting." Petru shook his head. "I'm stopping," he said. "There is a difference." Davin was angry. He took the stone and left. Petru felt a familiar urge rise: regret, justification, defense. He let it pass. In the days that followed, Petru worked less. He chose stones that responded. He left others untouched. Some days, he did not carve at all. Instead, he watched how light fell across the quarry walls. He noticed fractures he had ignored before, not as flaws, as information. Alon began to ask Petru for advice, not about technique, about judgment. "How do you know when to stop?" Alon asked one day. Petru smiled faintly. "When the stone stops opening," he said. "And when I do." This story is not about quitting. Petru did not abandon his craft. He refined his listening. Letting go gently does not mean walking away from everything that resists. It means recognizing when resistance is no longer productive. We often confuse persistence with virtue. We praise endurance, even when it becomes self-harm. But there is a difference between commitment and refusal to see. Petru learned to let the stone speak, and in doing so, he learned to let himself speak as well. We all work with materials that push back: bodies, relationships, projects, even our own expectations. When we ignore resistance, we harden. When we listen, we adapt. Letting go gently means allowing limits to inform us, not shame us. The stone was not a failure. Petru was not weak. They were simply no longer suited to the same demand. As the night deepens, this understanding may be settling quietly. You may notice places where effort has continued long after usefulness ended. Places where finishing became more important than honesty. There is no need to act on this now. Not tonight. Awareness alone loosens the grip. Petru did not change everything at once. He changed how he listened. And that was enough. The quarry remained. Stone remained. But the work no longer required force. Here, in the long night, we are doing the same. We are not solving. We are not fixing. We are allowing truth to emerge without pressure. If sleep comes, it comes. If thought lingers, it lingers. Nothing is being wasted. We are simply setting down what no longer opens, trusting that what remains workable will meet us again when the hands are ready. The night stretches on, calm and unbroken. By now, letting go may feel less like a moment and more like a slow unwinding, not something we choose all at once, but something that happens as the grip grows tired of holding. There is another story that belongs to this hour. It is about a woman named Mireka who wove cloth in a small coastal village. Her loom stood near an open window, where salt air moved the threads almost before her hands did. Mireka learned to weave from her mother, not through instruction, but through watching. Years of sitting nearby, fingers idle at first, then curious. Her cloth was known for its strength, not beauty, not complexity. It lasted. Fishermen brought her nets to mend. Families brought her worn garments to repair. Mireka believed in reinforcement. If a thread weakened, she doubled it. If a seam loosened, she stitched it twice. Better too strong than too fragile, she often said. For a long time, this served her well. But as years passed, something subtle changed. The cloth grew heavier, stiffer. People began to comment. "It's durable," they said, "but it doesn't move like it used to." Mireka nodded politely. She did not change her method. One afternoon, during a period of strong winds, a sailor named Oren came to her with a torn sail. "It caught too much air," he said. "It wouldn't give." Mireka examined the tier. The fabric was thick, tightly woven, strong. She repaired it as she always did. Oren returned days later. It tore again, he said, in the same place. Mireka frowned. "That shouldn't happen," she said. Oren shrugged. "The wind was strong," he replied. "But sails need to move." Mireka did not respond. That night, she sat alone at her loom. She ran her fingers along the finished cloth. It resisted her touch. She remembered how her mother's cloth had felt firm, but responsive, able to bend without breaking. Mireka realized she had been weaving as if the world only pulled in one direction, as if strength alone were enough. The next morning, she loosened the tension on her loom. Only slightly. The threads shifted. The cloth felt different under her hands. She wove slowly, uncertain. The result was lighter, less dense. When she held it up, she felt an old fear rise. What if it doesn't last? She finished the piece anyway. When Oren returned, she offered him the new sail. He tested it with his hands. "It feels alive," he said. Mireka watched him leave, unsure. Weeks passed. The sail did not return. When Oren finally came back, it was only to thank her. "It holds," he said, "and it gives." Mireka felt something soften. She did not abandon reinforcement. She learned when to stop adding it. This story is not about weaving. It is about how we respond to pressure. When life pulls hard, we often respond by tightening everything. Schedules, standards, expectations. We reinforce and reinforce, believing that strength comes from resistance. But sometimes, strength comes from flexibility, from knowing when to allow movement. Letting go gently does not mean becoming weak. It means allowing space for forces to pass through without tearing us apart. Mireka did not stop caring about durability. She stopped confusing rigidity with resilience. We do this often. We hold our days too tightly, our plans too firmly, our sense of self too stiffly. And when pressure comes, as it always does, we break where we could have bent. Tonight, this lesson may be settling quietly. You may notice how effort relaxes when it no longer needs to defend itself. How thoughts soften when they are no longer braced against change. Letting go gently is like loosening the loom just enough for the cloth to breathe. Nothing dramatic happens. The work simply feels different. Mireka continued weaving for many years. Her cloth changed again and again as she did. Some pieces were stronger, some lighter. She did not seek a perfect balance. She listened. As the night deepens further, listening may feel easier than thinking. Words may float by without catching. That is fine. Understanding does not need to be held tightly to be real. Like cloth that moves with the wind, meaning can pass through without resistance. We remain here, unhurried, allowing tension to ease where it is ready, trusting that what truly supports us does not require constant reinforcement. The night continues to hold us, quietly, generously, asking nothing in return. The night carries on, steady and wide. By now, letting go may feel less like release and more like allowing things to arrive, allowing things to fade, allowing ourselves to stop managing every moment. There is another story that belongs to this part of the night. It is about a man named Nikhil who tended a public garden in a quiet city square. The garden was not large, but it was old. Stone paths curved gently between trees and low hedges. Benches sat where people naturally paused. Nikhil had not designed the garden. He inherited it from others who had shaped it long before him. His work was maintenance, pruning, watering, replacing what had died. He believed deeply in balance. Too much growth choked the paths. Too little left the ground bare. Each morning, he walked the garden slowly, noting changes. a branch leaning too far, a vine creeping where it did not belong, leaves gathering where they blocked the drain. He corrected everything. Visitors admired the garden. It always looks the same. They said, "That must take discipline." Nikhil nodded. He took pride in consistency. But seasons do not stay consistent. One summer was hotter than expected. Rain came late, then all at once. Plants grew unevenly. Some flourished wildly, others withered. Nikhil worked longer hours. He trimmed aggressively. He replanted quickly. Still, the garden felt unsettled. One morning, a woman named Elsbeth sat on a bench near the old fig tree. She visited often, always at the same time. "You look tired," she said as Nikhil passed. "The garden is changing," he replied. "I'm trying to keep up." Elsbeth studied the fig tree. "It's older than both of us," she said. "It's changed many times." Nikhil frowned. "That doesn't mean I should let it grow wild," he said. Elsbeth smiled gently. "Of course not," she replied. "But wild is not the only alternative to control." Nikhil said nothing. Days later, a section of the hedge failed. Not dramatically, just thinned. People began walking through the opening, creating a new path. Nikhil noticed immediately. He planned to repair it the next morning. That night, he could not sleep. The image of the broken hedge replayed in his mind. By morning, he was irritated. When he arrived, he found that the path had already been worn smooth by footsteps. It was clear where people wanted to walk. Nikhil stood there, conflicted. A young woman named Irina passed by. "This way is easier," she said, gesturing to the new path. "I hope that's okay." Nikhil hesitated. "It wasn't designed that way," he said. Irina nodded. "But it feels like it belongs." She walked on. Nikhil stood alone. He thought of how often he had redirected people back to the stone paths, how often he had repaired the same worn edges. He felt something loosen. That afternoon, he did not repair the hedge. He watched. The next day, he placed stepping stones along the new path. Carefully, respectfully, the garden changed. Not for the worse. It felt more alive. Over time, Nikhil began to work differently. He still tended, still cared. But he stopped insisting that the garden remain frozen in its previous form. Some plants were allowed to spread, some paths shifted slightly. Visitors lingered longer. Elsbeth noticed. "It breathes now," she said. Nikhil smiled, surprised by the relief he felt. "I didn't realize how tightly I was holding it," he said. This story is not about gardens. It is about our relationship with order. We often believe that letting go means allowing chaos, that if we stop controlling, everything will fall apart. But life has its own intelligence. Paths form where walking happens. Growth follows light and water. When we fight this too hard, we exhaust ourselves. Nikhil did not stop caring for the garden. He stopped fighting its natural movement. Letting go gently does not mean abandoning structure. It means allowing structure to adapt. We do this in our own lives. We cling to old routines that no longer fit, old expectations about how we should move through our days. When reality wears a new path, we rush to repair the hedge. But sometimes, the wiser choice is to lay stones. As the night deepens, this insight may be settling softly. You may notice how effort relaxes when you stop correcting every deviation. How rest arrives when vigilance eases. Letting go is not passive, it is responsive. Nikhil still walked the garden every morning. He simply listened more carefully to what it showed him. Tonight, you do not need to guide yourself anywhere. The night already knows how to move. Thoughts may wander. Attention may drift. There is no path to enforce. We remain here, together, allowing the shape of rest to emerge naturally, trusting that what needs tending will reveal itself, and what needs releasing will loosen without force. The garden holds itself. The night does the same, and we are allowed to rest inside it. The night continues to widen, as if there is no edge to it. Letting go now may feel almost invisible, not something we are practicing, not something we are aiming for, just something that happens when there is no longer a need to interfere. There is another story that belongs to this quiet part of the night. It is about a woman named Yelena who lived beside a long, shallow lake. The lake was known for its stillness. On calm days, the sky seemed to rest on its surface. Yelena fished there, not with nets, with a simple line and a small wooden boat. She fished not to sell, but to eat. Enough for the day, sometimes enough for the next. She had learned early that the lake did not respond well to force. If she pulled too quickly, the line snapped. If she waited too tensely, nothing bit at all. So she learned patience. But patience, over time, became something else. Yelena began to measure her days by what the lake gave her. A good catch meant a good day. An empty line meant disappointment. She tried not to think this way, but habits form quietly. Some mornings, the lake was generous Some mornings, it was not. On the days it was not, Yelena stayed longer. She changed bait. She moved the boat. She told herself she was being diligent, but she returned home tired and tight, carrying the absence with her. One afternoon, an older man named Bodan drifted past her in a weathered canoe. He was not fishing. He let the boat move where the water took it. "You don't worry about catching anything?" Yelena asked. Bodan smiled. "I worry less than I used to," he said. Yelena watched him float. "That seems risky," she said. "What if you come back with nothing?" Bodan shrugged. "Then I come back," he replied. The answer stayed with her. Weeks later, after several empty mornings in a row, Yelena felt something shift. She noticed how her shoulders tensed as soon as the line entered the water, how her breath shortened. She remembered Bodan's canoe. The next morning, she did something different. She cast her line and let it rest. She did not adjust. She did not scan the water for signs. She simply sat. Time passed. She noticed the sound of water against the boat, the way light moved across the lake. When a fish finally bit, it surprised her. She laughed out loud, not because of the catch, but because she had forgotten what waiting felt like without pressure. That day, she brought home fish. Another day, she did not. But something had loosened. Yelena stopped measuring her worth by what the lake offered. She still fished. She still cared. But she stopped leaning into the line before it pulled. This story is not about fishing. It is about expectation. We often arrive at our days already pulling, already braced for a result. We tell ourselves this is responsibility, but often it is anxiety wearing a practical disguise. Letting go gently means allowing outcomes to approach us rather than dragging them forward. The lake does not respond to tension, neither does rest. As the night deepens, this may be happening here. Listening may soften. The urge to follow every word may fade. That is not a loss. It is the same easing Yelena felt when she stopped pulling on the line. Letting go does not mean nothing happens. It means what happens arrives without strain. The night does not need us to monitor it. Sleep does not need to be summoned. They come when space is made. And space is made when we stop leaning forward. We remain here, floating gently, allowing the lake of the night to offer what it will, trusting that even when nothing seems to be happening, something essential is already underway. The night moves on without asking us to follow. Letting go, at this point, may feel almost like relief without celebration. a quiet easing that does not need to be noticed to be real, like a knot loosening while our attention is elsewhere. There is another story that belongs to this hour. It is about a man named Takumi who repaired roofs in a mountain town. The houses there were old, built to endure heavy snow and long winters. Wooden beams darkened by age, tiles shaped by hand, each one slightly different. Takumi learned the work from his father. He learned how to step lightly on fragile beams, how to listen for hollow sounds, how to replace only what was necessary. He became known for caution. If Takumi fixes it, people said, it will last. Takumi took this seriously. He inspected every roof himself. He climbed even when his legs shook with cold. He refused help when offered. I know these roofs, he would say. They trust me. For many years, this felt true. But time does not argue. Takumi's balance grew less certain. His hands still knew what to do, but his body hesitated in ways it had not before. He adjusted his pace. He told himself he was being careful. Still, the work weighed on him. One winter morning, while repairing a farmhouse roof, Takumi slipped. Not far, not dangerously, but enough to leave him sitting hard against the slope, heart racing. A younger worker named Jiro, who had come to deliver materials, saw him. "Are you hurt?" Jiro called. Takumi stood slowly. "I'm fine," he said. But his voice betrayed him. Jiro climbed up carefully and stood nearby. "You shouldn't be up here alone," Jiro said. Takumi frowned. "I've done this all my life," he replied. Jiro nodded. "I know," he said. "That's why I came quickly." Takumi felt irritation rise. Then something else. Fear. That evening, Takumi sat by his hearth longer than usual. He thought of all the roofs he had repaired, all the winters survived. He realized he had begun to confuse experience with immunity. The next day, Takumi asked Jiro to join him. They worked together in silence. Takumi noticed how Jiro moved, careful, but not rigid, attentive, but not tense. When Takumi pointed out a weak beam, Jiro listened. When Jiro suggested a safer approach, Takumi hesitated, then agreed. The roof held. Over the following months, Takumi changed how he worked. He did not stop climbing roofs entirely, but he no longer insisted on doing everything himself. Some days, he stayed below, guiding with his voice. Some days, he worked alongside others. At first, this felt like loss. Then it felt like relief. One afternoon, an older neighbor named Hana approached him. "I heard you're training helpers now," she said. Takumi nodded. I waited too long, he replied. Hana smiled kindly. Or just long enough, she said. Takumi watched the mountains as evening settled. For the first time in years, his body did not ache with tomorrow's work. This story is not about aging. It is about how we hold responsibility. We often believe that letting go means abandoning what we care about, that if we loosen our grip, everything will collapse. But Takumi did not stop caring about roofs. He stopped confusing care with control. There is a moment often quiet when effort becomes unnecessary strain. That moment does not announce itself loudly. It appears as hesitation, as fatigue, as a small slip that catches our attention. Letting go gently means listening when that moment arrives, not arguing with it, not forcing ourselves past it. Takumi did not fail his craft by sharing it. He allowed it to continue beyond his own limits. We face similar moments in our own lives. Moments when we realize we cannot carry everything alone anymore. When holding on begins to cost more than it gives. Letting go does not always mean stopping. Sometimes it means sharing. Sometimes it means stepping back. Sometimes it means trusting that what matters can survive without constant supervision. As the night deepens here, this understanding may be settling softly. You may notice that effort feels less necessary, that listening does not require concentration, that the body no longer needs to brace itself. This is not something to encourage or resist. It is simply what happens when the grip relaxes. Takumi still walked through the town each morning. He still looked up at roofs. But he no longer felt responsible for every tile. He allowed himself to be part of a larger rhythm. The snow still came. The roofs still aged. And life continued, steadier for it. We are allowed the same easing. We do not need to hold this night together. We do not need to keep watch. If sleep comes, it comes. If wakefulness lingers, it lingers. Both are part of the same letting go. We remain here, together, in the wide middle of the night, where effort softens on its own, where responsibility loosens into trust, and where rest arrives, not because we force it, but because nothing is being held too tightly anymore. The night keeps unfolding, without direction and without demand. By now, letting go may feel so ordinary that it almost disappears. Not a special state, not an insight to hold on to, just a quiet absence of strain. There is another story that fits naturally here. It is about a woman named Inez, who kept records in a small municipal office near the sea. Her work was to file births, deaths, property lines, and names that changed over time. The office was old, The shelves bowed slightly under the weight of paper. Ink faded unevenly, depending on the year and the hand that wrote it. Inés took her work seriously. She believed that accuracy was a form of respect, that names, once written, deserved to be kept correctly. Each morning, she arrived early. She checked old entries. She corrected small inconsistencies in the margins. She knew the archive well. She knew which drawers stuck, which folders needed gentler handling. People trusted her. If Inés has it, they said, it's real. For many years, this felt like purpose. But slowly, without warning, the town changed. People moved more often. Names shifted more frequently. Records arrived incomplete. Inés found herself staying late. She rewrote entries. She cross-checked dates. She worried about errors that might go unnoticed. One afternoon, a fisherman named Duarte came to correct a record. My father's name is spelled wrong, he said. Inés apologized and searched. The error was small, a single letter. She corrected it carefully. Duarte watched her. Does it bother you, he asked, that things change so much? Inés paused. That's why records matter, she said. Duarte nodded. But do they ever stop changing? He asked. The question lingered after he left. Weeks later, a storm flooded part of the archive. Not disastrously, just enough to damage some papers near the floor. Inés arrived to find damp pages and blurred ink. Her chest tightened. She worked frantically to salvage what she could. As she spread documents to dry, she noticed something. Some records were unreadable now, but their absence did not undo the lives they described. Births still happened. Deaths still mattered. The paper had never been the event. That night, Inés sat alone in the office long after dark. She realized how tightly she had been holding the idea that permanence was her responsibility, that if she loosened her grip, history would vanish. The next day, she worked differently. She still cared, still recorded carefully. But she stopped trying to make the records eternal. She accepted smudges. She accepted corrections. When something could not be restored, she noted it plainly and moved on. Over time, her evenings grew shorter. Her shoulders eased. One morning, a young clerk named Mauro joined the office. Inés showed her how to file. But what if I make a mistake? Mauro asked. Inés smiled. Then we note it, she said, and life continues. This story is not about paperwork. It is about our relationship with control. We often believe that holding tightly preserves meaning, that if we relax, things will be lost. But meaning does not live in our grip. It lives in what already happened. Letting go gently does not erase the past. It releases the impossible task of preserving it perfectly. We do this internally as well. We try to keep our story consistent, our identity intact, our choices justified. We rewrite memory to protect coherence. But life does not require perfect records. It moves forward, whether or not everything lines up. As the night deepens, this truth may be felt rather than understood. Thoughts may no longer insist on being sorted. Memories may blur at the edges. This is not a failure of attention. It is a softening of control. Ines did not stop caring about accuracy. She stopped confusing accuracy with safety. We can do the same. We do not need to secure every thought. We do not need to keep every memory intact. What matters has already lived. As listening continues, or fades, or drifts in and out, nothing essential is at risk. The night does not need us to archive it. It passes through on its own, leaving behind only what belongs. We remain here, gently releasing the need to preserve, to perfect, to hold still what was never meant to be fixed in place. The night is generous enough to carry everything without our help, and we are allowed to rest inside that generosity. The night keeps its quiet promise. Nothing new is being asked of us. Nothing needs to be added. Letting go now feels like the simple absence of resistance, the way a room feels larger once something heavy has been moved without ceremony. There is another story that belongs to this deep hour. It is about a man named Osmar who tuned instruments. Not repaired, not built. Tuned. His workshop was small and narrow, with a single window that faced an alley where footsteps echoed softly. Inside, violins rested in open cases, flutes lay on cloth. Old pianos waited with their lids raised like listening ears. Osmar believed in precision. He could hear the slightest wavering in a note. He could feel, through his fingertips, when a string was just shy of true. Musicians sought him out because of this. If Osmar tunes it, they said, it will sing. For years, his work was steady. He moved from instrument to instrument, adjusting, listening, adjusting again. But slowly, something changed. Not his hearing, not his skill, his patience. He began to notice how quickly musicians wanted perfection, how tense they were when he worked. Can you make it exact, they would ask, as exact as possible. Osmar would nod. But inside, something tightened. He began to chase an ideal that kept retreating. a purity of sound that existed more in concept than in wood or metal. Late one evening, a cellist named Layla arrived with her instrument. "It doesn't feel right," she said. "I can't explain it." Osmar listened carefully as she played. The tone was warm, balanced, technically sound. He began tuning anyway. He adjusted one string, then another. The sound grew sharper, cleaner. Layla frowned. "It's clearer," she said, "but I don't recognize it." Osmar paused. He listened again. The cello was perfectly in tune. And yet, something essential had thinned. He loosened the string slightly. Layla played again. Her shoulders dropped. "There," she said quietly. "That's it." Osmar felt a small shock. He had been taught that tuning was about correction, about bringing something to an external standard. But what he had done just then was different. He had let the instrument return to itself. That night, after Layla left, Osmar sat alone in the workshop. He played a single note on an old violin. He adjusted it, then adjusted it back. He realized how often he had been forcing instruments into compliance with an idea of perfection that did not belong to them, and how often he did the same to himself. The next day, Osmar changed how he worked. Not dramatically, quietly. He still tuned carefully, but he stopped chasing absolute precision when the sound resisted. When a musician asked for perfection, he asked instead, "What do you want to hear?" Some instruments left his shop less exact by measure, but more alive. Not everyone approved. One violinist complained, "This isn't what it should be," she said. Osmar nodded. "It's what it is," he replied. Over time, his workshop grew quieter. Not fewer instruments, fewer demands. This story is not about music. It is about how we listen. We often hold ourselves to invisible standards, ideas of how calm we should be, how productive, how healed. And when we don't match them, we tighten. We adjust and adjust, trying to force ourselves into tune with an image that no longer fits. Letting go gently means listening for what is actually sounding now. Not what should be. Not what once did. But what is present. Osmar did not abandon skill. He refined sensitivity. He learned that exactness is not the same as truth. We can do the same. As the night deepens, you may notice how effort drops away when you stop correcting your inner state. Sleep does not require precision. Rest does not need to be exact. They arrive when we stop overtuning. There is another story that drifts in here, quieter still. It is about a woman named Anouk who kept watch at a mountain pass. Her task was simple. Each evening, she lit a lantern. Each morning, she extinguished it. The lantern marked a narrow path travelers used before dawn. Anouk lived alone in a small stone shelter beside the path. Her days were long, her nights longer. She took the duty seriously. If the lantern dimmed, she trimmed the wick. If the glass fogged, she cleaned it. She believed that vigilance was kindness. One winter, snow fell heavier than usual. Travel slowed. Some nights, no one passed at all. Anouk stayed awake anyway. She watched the flame. She checked it repeatedly. Her eyes burned with fatigue. One night, the wind rose suddenly. The lantern flickered hard. Anouk rushed out to shield it with her body. She stood there, snow collecting on her shoulders, holding the lantern steady with her hands. The flame survived, but Anouk shivered uncontrollably. The next morning, a traveler named Carol arrived late. I almost turned back. He said, "I thought the lantern would be out." Anouk smiled weakly. But it wasn't. She said. Carl looked at her closely. "You can't stand there all night," he said. Anouk shrugged. "That's my job." Carl shook his head. "The lantern knows how to burn," he said. "You don't need to become it." The words stayed with her. That evening, the wind rose again. The lantern flickered. Anouk stepped outside, then stopped. She watched from a distance. The flame bent. It dimmed. Then it steadied. Anouk felt fear rise. Then something else. Trust. She went back inside. The lantern burned until morning. Nothing was lost. Over time, Anouk changed. She still lit the lantern, still tended it. But she stopped guarding it with her body. She slept more. She dreamed. Travelers still found their way. This story is not about responsibility. It is about over-identification. We often believe we must become the thing we care for, that if we step back, it will fail. But many things have their own strength. Letting go gently means trusting that what is meant to continue can do so without our constant sacrifice. Tonight, this trust may be arriving quietly. You may notice how vigilance softens, how the need to monitor fades. This is not carelessness. It is confidence without tension. Anouk did not abandon the lantern. She allowed it to burn. We are allowed the same. The night does not need guarding. Sleep does not need protection. They know how to arrive. If listening fades, it fades. If it continues, it continues. Nothing is being mishandled. We remain here. without standing watch, without holding the flame, allowing the night to do what it has always done, and allowing ourselves, finally, to let go gently, enough to rest. The night is deep now, wide and unhurried. At this hour, letting go no longer feels like a movement away from something. It feels more like settling into what has already been happening on its own. A quiet agreement with the way things naturally loosen when they are no longer watched. There is another story that fits into this stillness. It is about a man named Soren who ferried people across a narrow channel between two pieces of land. The crossing was short, but the water was unpredictable. Tides shifted. Currents changed direction without warning. Soren had done this work for decades. He knew the water by sight, by sound, by the way the boat responded beneath his feet. Each morning, he checked the ropes. Each crossing, he adjusted the angle of the oar. He believed in control, not dominance, attentiveness. People trusted him because of this. He never drifts, they said. And for a long time, that was true. But as the years passed, Soren noticed how often he fought the water, how often he corrected, compensated, resisted. His shoulders ached, his hands cramped. Still, he told himself this was the cost of doing the work properly. One afternoon, a woman named Lala boarded the boat. She was quiet, carrying nothing but a small bag. As they crossed, a sudden current pulled the boat slightly off course. Soren tightened his grip and pulled harder. The boat lurched. Lala steadied herself and laughed softly. "You don't like the water choosing," she said. Soren frowned. "I don't let it," he replied. Lala watched the surface. "You could," she said, "just a little." Soren scoffed. "If I stop steering," he said, "we'll drift." Lale nodded. "Yes," she said, "but drifting isn't always losing." The words stayed with him. Days later, during a particularly strong tide, Soren felt his strength falter. The oar resisted him more than usual. For the first time, he felt afraid, not of the water, of his own effort failing. In that moment, without deciding to, he loosened his pull. The boat shifted. The current carried it sideways for a few seconds, then gently back toward the landing. Soren corrected lightly. They arrived safely. His breath shook. Nothing terrible had happened. After that day, Soren experimented quietly, not with abandoning control, with softening it. He learned when to work with the current rather than against it, when to let the boat slide briefly before guiding it back His crossings grew smoother. His body hurt less. One evening, after the last crossing, Soren sat alone in the boat, letting it rock gently. He realized he had confused control with safety. But safety, he saw now, often came from responsiveness, not force. This story is not about boats. It is about trust. We often hold tightly because we believe loosening means danger. That if we stop steering every moment, something will go wrong. But life, like water, already moves. We can exhaust ourselves fighting its direction, or we can learn to adjust within it. Letting go gently does not mean surrendering wisdom. It means allowing wisdom to become flexible. Soren did not stop steering. He stopped panicking when the current spoke. Tonight, this understanding may be arriving quietly. You may notice that you are no longer trying to follow every word. That attention floats, then returns, then floats again. This is not drifting away. It is drifting safely. The night knows how to carry you. There is another story that settles easily here. It is about a woman named Runa who kept bees on the edge of a forest. Her hives sat in a clearing where wildflowers grew thick and untamed. Runa loved structure. She labeled every hive. She recorded every change. She believed that careful management produced healthy colonies. For years, this was true. But one spring, the bees behaved differently. They swarmed more often. They ignored some of the flowers Runa expected them to favor. Runa intervened constantly. She adjusted frames. She moved hives. The bees responded poorly. Production dropped. Runa felt frustration rise. She studied books. She sought advice. Nothing helped. One day, an older beekeeper named Iskander visited. He watched quietly as Runa worked. "You're working very hard," he said. "I have to," Runa replied. "They're not doing what they should." Iskander smiled gently. "What if," he said, "they're doing exactly what they need?" Runa bristled. "They're failing," she said. Iskander shook his head. "They're adapting," he replied. "You're interrupting them." Runa was silent. That season, reluctantly, she stepped back. She intervened less. She observed more. The bees reorganized themselves. Production slowly returned. But something else changed. Runa felt calmer. She realized how often she had been managing out of fear rather than care. Letting go gently, she discovered, was not negligence. It was respect. This story is not about bees. It is about allowing intelligence that is not ours to operate. We often assume that if we are not directing, nothing intelligent is happening. But much of life knows how to organize itself when not micromanaged. Our bodies know how to rest. Our minds know how to quiet. Sleep is not something we produce. It is something we allow. As the night deepens, allowing may feel easier than effort. You may find yourself no longer checking whether you are relaxed enough, calm enough, sleepy enough. That checking was never required. Letting go gently means trusting the processes already in motion. There is one more story that belongs here, quieter than the others. It is about a man named Elio, who watched clouds from the same hill each evening. He did not do this for any purpose. It was simply where he ended his days. Some evenings, the clouds moved quickly. Some evenings, they barely shifted. Elio used to name them, track them, predict the weather. Over time, he stopped. Not because he lost interest, because he lost urgency. One evening, a child named Noam sat beside him. "What are you looking for?" Noam asked. Elio thought. "Nothing," he said. "Then why watch?" Noam asked. Elio smiled. "Because they're already there," he replied. The child watched too. After a while, Noam grew bored and ran off. Elio stayed. The clouds moved on. This story does not teach. It simply rests, like we are resting now. Nothing needs to be concluded. Nothing needs to be remembered. Letting go gently, at this hour, means allowing the night to complete itself. If sleep has already arrived, then the listening has done its work. If sleep is still approaching, it will come in its own way. We are not holding anything together. We are not steering the crossing. We are floating, safely, carried by the quiet intelligence of the night itself. The night keeps its slow, generous pace. At this depth of listening, letting go may no longer feel like a concept at all. It may feel like the absence of commentary, like the moment when the mind grows quiet, not because it was asked to, but because it has nothing left to insist upon. There is another story that belongs to this hour. It is about a woman named Callista who folded paper. Not for art, not for ceremony. She folded paper for packaging in a small warehouse near the rail lines. Brown paper, thin paper, paper that tore easily if handled without care. Callista worked quickly, but not hurriedly. Each fold was precise, practiced. Others rushed. They tried to finish faster. Callista finished steadily. Her supervisor once asked her how she managed to keep the same pace all day. "I don't," Callista replied. "I let the paper tell me." The answer puzzled him. What Callista meant was simple. When she forced the fold, the paper creased badly. When she hesitated too much, it slipped. But when she allowed her hands to move with the paper's natural bend, the fold appeared without effort. For years, this felt effortless, until one season when demand increased sharply. More shipments, tighter deadlines. The warehouse grew louder, more urgent. Callista felt the pressure seep into her hands. She folded faster. She corrected mistakes quickly. But the paper tore more often. Her supervisor frowned. "You're making more waste," he said. Callista nodded, confused. She stayed late that night, alone in the warehouse, folding quietly. She noticed how tense her fingers had become, how she was no longer listening for the paper's movement. She was imposing her own rhythm. The next day, she slowed slightly. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to feel again. The paper folded cleanly. The waste decreased. No one praised her. No one noticed. But her hands relaxed. This story is not about paper. It is about how we move when pressure arrives. When urgency increases, we often respond by tightening. We grip the day, we grip ourselves, but tightening rarely produces the outcome we want. Letting go gently does not mean ignoring pressure. It means not letting pressure dictate our relationship with what we are doing. Callista did not resist the workload. She resisted the urge to override the process. Tonight, there may be nothing demanding your output. And yet, habits of urgency can still linger. The habit of monitoring, the habit of adjusting. Letting go here may simply mean allowing attention to soften, trusting that nothing needs correction right now. The night continues without needing to be managed. There is another story that settles quietly beside this one. It is about a man named Idris who repaired shoes in a narrow street market. Leather hung from hooks above his bench. The smell of polish and glue marked his place from a distance. Idris believed in restoration. A worn sole could be replaced. A torn seam could be stitched. He took pride in returning shoes to usefulness. One day, a woman named Sienna brought him a pair of boots. They were old, scuffed. The leather cracked deeply. "These were my mother's," she said. "Can you make them new?" Idris examined them carefully. "I can make them wearable," he said, "but they will never be new." Sienna hesitated. "That's fine," she said. "I just don't want to lose them." Idris worked carefully. He replaced the soles. He softened the leather as much as possible. When Sienna returned, she held the boots quietly. They still look old, she said. Idris nodded. They've walked a long way, he replied. She smiled unexpectedly. Yes, she said. That's what I wanted to keep. After she left, Idris sat for a while without working. He realized how often people asked him to erase signs of wear, to undo time, and how often he tried. But wear, he saw, was not damage. It was evidence. Letting go, gently, sometimes, means letting wear remain visible, not polishing everything smooth. We do this with ourselves too. We hide fatigue. We hide uncertainty. We try to appear untouched by time and effort. But letting go allows us to stop repairing what does not need repair. Idris continued his work, but he stopped trying to make everything look new. Some shoes left his bench with their age intact. People began to trust him differently. They came not to erase the past, but to carry it forward. As the night deepens, the same invitation is here. We do not need to fix tiredness. We do not need to correct wandering thoughts. They are signs of a long day, of a full life. Letting go gently means allowing that truth without judgment. There is another story that passes through softly now. It is about a woman named Etta who cleaned windows in tall buildings. She worked early in the mornings before offices filled with people. Her work was repetitive, up and down, left and right. She liked the quiet. But one morning, while working high above the street, she noticed her fear had returned. She had not been afraid of heights before, but now her hands trembled. She tightened her grip on the frame. Her breath shortened. She finished the job, but felt shaken. The next day, the fear returned. Etta considered quitting. Instead, she spoke with an older cleaner named Paolo. He listened. "You're holding the height as if it's new," he said. "What does that mean?" Etta asked. "You're gripping it," Paolo replied, "instead of standing in it." The words puzzled her. The next morning, Etta worked more slowly. She noticed how the building held her, how the harness supported her weight. She stopped bracing for the fall. The fear softened. It did not disappear, but it no longer controlled her hands. This story is not about courage. It is about trust. Etta did not eliminate fear. She stopped fighting it. Letting go gently does not mean becoming fearless. It means not adding resistance to what is already present. Fear, fatigue, restlessness. When we stop opposing them, they lose their grip. As the night moves on, these qualities may still appear. They are allowed. They do not need managing. The night holds them easily. There is another story, quieter still. It is about a man named Joachim who mended nets for fishermen. He sat at the same spot on the pier every afternoon. Children passed him. Birds gathered scraps nearby. Joachim's hands moved automatically. He knew every knot. One day, a child asked him, "Don't you get tired of fixing holes?" Joachim smiled. "The holes aren't the work," he said. "The net is." The child looked confused. Joachim continued mending. He did not rush to finish the net. He worked until his hands stopped, then rested. Some days, nets went back unfinished. The fishermen did not complain. They knew he would continue the next day. This story does not conclude. It simply continues. Like the night, letting go gently, now, may mean allowing things to remain unfinished, allowing thought to pause mid-sentence, allowing listening to soften without resolution. Nothing is incomplete in a way that matters. We are not here to arrive anywhere. We are here to rest in the unfolding. The night continues to carry us, without direction, without demand, and without asking us to hold it together. If sleep comes, it comes quietly. If wakefulness lingers, it lingers gently. We remain here, ungripping, unhurried, letting go in the simplest way possible, by no longer insisting on holding at all. The night has carried us a long way. Stories have come and gone, like footsteps on a quiet path. Some may still be clear. Others may already be fading. Nothing needs to be gathered from them now. We have spent this time circling one simple movement, the way holding softens, the way effort loosens, the way letting go happens not through force, but through kindness, again and again. Through many lives, we have seen the same truth that what is held too tightly grows rigid, and what is allowed finds its own balance. There is nothing here to conclude, nothing to summarize or fix in place. If understanding came, it came. If it slipped past unnoticed, that is equally fine. Understanding was never the goal. Rest was always nearby. At this point in the night, it may be difficult to tell where listening ends and drifting begins. Thoughts may be thin, or scattered, or absent altogether. The body may already feel heavy, or light, or simply distant. There is no need to adjust any of this. Awareness can soften now. Attention can rest where it naturally settles, perhaps near the quiet rhythm of breathing, perhaps in the weight of the body against whatever supports it. Nothing needs to be done with these sensations. They are already doing their work. Sleep may have arrived long ago. or it may still be approaching, unhurried, confident that it will be welcomed whenever it comes. We do not need to help it. The night knows how to finish itself. If there are fragments of stories still echoing, they can fade. If there are moments of silence between words, they can widen. Everything is allowed to slow. We are not holding on to the night. The night is holding us. Letting go. In the end, is this simple? No longer insisting on staying awake. No longer insisting on falling asleep. No longer insisting on anything at all. Just resting in what is already happening. Sleep well. And thank you for joining us here at Calm Monk.